Brock Bowers. We heard from him after Tuesday's practice. Him and Kamari Lassiter. Brock talked about. First of all, I thought it was pretty telling to hear from Brock that he is just his mindset going into this year, and the fact that he is keeping a level head. It was very similar. I feel like we had these same conversations last spring, hearing him speak after his outstanding freshman season. He's keeping the same approach. He's no different than the guy he was the last two seasons, and keeping the same approach, wanting to keep up his involvement in the offense the same way, and ready to take on whatever that takes, whatever that looks like. Obviously, no Darnell Washington. The tight end room is going to look different. New offensive coordinator. He talked about what that may look like, some wrinkles that are going to be involved with Mike Bobo. Obviously not giving too much away there. But the fact that he's enjoying what things look like, and that Bobo worked with the tight ends last season. We heard that from Darnell at the Combine. And now we're hearing it from Brock Bowers himself, the man, the myth, the legend, the star of that tight end room, has praise for Mike Bobo, what he's done already, working with that group, and what he's excited about for the future for that group.
Yeah, and my point, kind of coming from it, I couldn't write it this way because you can't write a story around a player that's, hey, he's normally boring, but he's not being boring this time. And ultimately, he wasn't being boring. He was. I think he was being honest when he talked about the fact that he likes, some of the wrinkles and some of the things being thrown, his way, from Mike Bobo. And, Bobo's had a lot of success with tight ends in the past. He's had success with tight ends that are similar to Brock Bowers. I mean, you look at Orson Charles. Orson Charles wasn't quite, nobody is quite the athlete that Brock Bowers is. Well, Orson Charles was probably the most successful tight end in Georgia history, just in terms of, I think he had maybe the best single season for a tight end before Bowers. Maybe it was Leonard Pope, but hey, Mike Bobo coached him too. Not necessarily coached him, but he was a quarterback's coach. He was around when that was around. So some of the better tight ends, he was around when Ben Watson was there, Leonard Pope. Jay Rome had a good little run there. Arthur Lynch was a really good player for Bobo. There were some fantastic tight ends during Bobo's time at Georgia. And Bowers just kind of breaks the mold on all of them. Honestly, I can't think of a college tight end I would ever pick over Brock Bowers. Everybody knows about my man crush here. I don't know that I would ever pick one.
It's huge.
Yeah, the thing about it is, like, what tight end do you hand a jet sweep to and you feel like, hey, he can house this? He can house this against an elite football team. I think where I really started to kind of get really into this whole Bowers thing was that SEC championship game last year, the only game Georgia's lost in the past 2 years. Georgia was able to kind of keep its head above water and maybe give itself a chance if a couple of things broke right to win that game because of number 19. And he put on a similar performance against Alabama that night to what Todd Gurley did in that 2012 SEC championship game. I've watched Todd Gurley. I've watched Nick Chubb at Georgia. I've covered those guys in person. And Brock Bowers, when he touches the football, is very, very similar to those players, in my view, because of the way he attacks defenses and because of the way he breaks tackles and how he can run away from guys. So I think, he's a special talent. Obviously, he's a luxury for Mike Bobo. But I think, one of the things I've when I was writing the story today about what he had to say about the new wrinkles that Bobo was putting into the offense, I'm sitting there thinking, like, all right, well, I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, what was he supposed to do? Right? Well, I mean, what Brock Bowers is supposed to say is something really boring because he's always extremely boring. Maybe the worst quote on the team and one of the worst quotes I think I've ever covered at Georgia. But he gave a good one on Bobo about kind of bringing new wrinkles to the offense. And funny, Kirby Smart used the exact same language when he spoke to us in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, what people are going to think that wrinkle is Brock Bowers as a fullback. I mean, we joked about it, but that feels like something that people are going to jump to that extreme and think, oh, well, you know, they're going to use Brock as this and that, and you know, what the new wrinkles. Look, if you have a player like Brock Bowers and you've seen what he can do, whether you were on staff last year or not, you know, he saw from afar what he did in 2021, watched him do it against Auburn. And then, you know, in 2022 was able to watch it a little bit closer, being, you know, working with him and getting hands-on and being a part of that team and that offense. You're stupid if you don't continue to do the same sort of things. You know, I mean, you're dumb. And this is Kirby Smart wouldn't hire somebody that's dumb. This is somebody that has coordinated. You don't get paid millions of dollars to be dumb. You know, people. Mike Bobo is somebody that has coordinated offenses. He knows the kind of weapon that he has because when you're a coach at that level, you're able to identify somebody that's different. And whether you've had somebody that's different or not, Brock Bowers is different. And it would be crazy to think that Mike Bobo isn't going to use Brock Bowers in similar ways to what Todd Monken did the last couple of years.
Yeah, 100%. See, Matthew C's pointing out the third and long stuff. I would challenge folks to go look at third and longs under Todd Monken. I've been in many a game thread over the past 3 years when Todd Monken would catch it in the teeth for calling a draw play on third and long. Also, a lot of times that's the head coach's call. A lot of times that's the head coach's being like, hey, let's run it and punt it because you don't want to get yourself in any further trouble. Running the ball on third and long is not bad when you got a Georgia defense on the other side like the defense on the other side like Georgia has. And, you know, I'm just really interested to see I don't give a crap about what we see at G-Day because that's not going to be what the offense is going to look like. You know, that Georgia's going to air raid and sling it around and do all that stuff, especially whenever you look at the fact, and we need to get into this too, that they're shorthanded at tight end right now. I mean, they are not as shorthanded as you might think because I got to looking at it, Palmer, one less tight end right now than they had this time last year.
Because they were down Darnell and they were down Brock.
Well, yeah, same amount of tight ends then because they had I guess Delt was around. Yeah, Delt was around. So one less than this time last year. So I mean, it wasn't really a huge difference, but you can't run 12 personnel on both sides of the ball not unless you put Bowers on one team, Sperling on the other, and then have Lawson Lucky, who has impressed thus far, bouncing back and forth. But ultimately the wide receiver depth's a little bit better. I think you're going to see a lot more 3 wide receiver stuff at G-Day. And, you're going to see Georgia throw the ball a ton. It's not going to look like the traditional offense because Georgia's not going to throw it 70% of the time in any particular game this coming season. If it does, Georgia's not as good as we thought it was because they're having to throw to catch up. And they shouldn't have to be throwing to catch up with anybody